What a year it's been. And I suppose in terms of strategy, what are the implications for the longer term future, the strategic direction of our firms? And I guess the metaphor I'm using to describe this is rather like an ice sculpture where we had quite a rigid structure in many firms, a rigid strategy, a rigid approach. That things are melted. Everything's very fluid now. We can do things that would have taken an age to do historically, but which happen overnight nowadays. So I think in many respects, firms have surprised themselves in their ability to be agile and their ability, to make necessity the mother of invention. However, at some point, the ice will refreeze. And I suppose my challenge to you as leaders is when it refreezes, let's make sure it refreezes into the shape we want it to be, rather than the shape it once was. Now, Churchill once famously said, never waste a good crisis. And I think, the pandemic's provided a great opportunity to bring around lots of positive change. When we think about strategy, what strategy at its core is about is the allocation of scarce resources to create that sustainable competitive advantage. But also what it's about is the ability to affect change. And again, over the years, I've come across many firms with wonderful stories, wonderful, in many respects, fairy stories that they call their strategy, but not really rooted in the ability to bring about change and the ability to deliver based on their competencies or their ability to acquire those competencies. And fundamentally, change is about leadership, and that's about the people on this call. So what do we as leaders do to shape and then deliver the strategies of our organizations? Two or three things just to mention. I'm a big believer in logical incrementalism as a school of thought. And what that's really about is being really clear about where we want to get to, but by being quite flexible about the means, and taking things in small incremental steps. And after each step, assessing where we got to, is our ultimate goal still the same, and making decisions in a much more dynamic way. I find that really useful in working with law firms in particular, or partnerships in general, where partners tend to be quite risk averse and tend not to like big leaps into the unknown, but will accept small change. It's also a fantastic approach in very fast moving dynamic markets. So for me, that incrementalist approach has a lot of leverage in this sort of world. It's also an approach which allows us to test and to fail fast and to try things. And again, we hate failure, don't we? But the reality is, in this fast-moving market, we need to be prepared to experiment strategically and tactically in order to find what works in a new paradigm. Leading into that, I guess, is the thought of, how do we possibly understand where to invest? How do we possibly understand how to shape strategy in a world which is increasingly unpredictable, in a world that we cannot possibly foresee? My metaphor here, if you like, is let's think about this in a sporting context. If you're the coach of a team and you're told there's a new game being invented, the rules are being written, there are no rules yet, and we only really know three things. We know it will involve a team of players. We know it will take place on a piece of grass, and we know it will involve a ball. The rules won't be published for 6 months, but your first competitive game will take place 2 weeks later. What do we do? Well, we could sit and wait for the rules and do nothing. That might not be the wisest move. What we probably do is find ways to identify the skills and competencies we'll need in order to compete. So that might be stamina, it might be agility, it might be hand-eye coordination, it will be communication. We focus on the core competencies, and then when we learn the rules of the game, we tune those competencies into the specific rule set in order to compete. So, seeing on the survey just there, the importance of training, the importance of people development, I'm really heartened by that, because I think that really lies at the core of successful strategy. I'd also say, as leaders, we lead through our values, through our behaviours, and through our bias for action. And our people are watching us. They're watching us in terms of how we communicate and implement strategy around our organisations. I end just with one thought, which is, it's said there are three types of organisation in the future. Those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder what happened. So I guess as leaders, let's make sure we're in the first group, not the third.